Hello everyone, Jonas here, and this is your daily dose of Python. Today I'm going to go over part 4, building out the project. Particularly, I will be speaking about the scoping as well as the design of this application that I am building. Okay, right here is my directory tree or hierarchy. So I am currently in my Python underscore tutorial folder, and I will be creating my parent directory for the project, HOSTUTIL. As the name implies, I will be making a host utility application. Okay, underneath this HOSTUTIL parent project folder, I will be creating 4 subfolders that will contain the different Python files or module files that I will be using to build this application. Okay, I will also be using object-oriented programming concept to build this application. Alright, the scope of this application when I start will be system info gathering. So it will gather information about memory, disk space, the UNIX. It will also incorporate log parsing, etc. etc. As I build out this project, I will also be incorporating network scanning as well as cloud or web communication using REST API. Now, before you guys throw rocks at me and say, Jonas, Unix and Linux development principles states that we need to create a certain application to do a specific task. Okay, I totally abide with that. But again, this is to demonstrate different Python concepts, and instead of making different applications, smaller applications, I'm just gonna bundle them in one application. In that way, it's easier to keep track of our code. Okay, I will also be using text-based menu as opposed to command line arguments. Okay, again, this is to display or show different Python concepts so that whoever is watching this will be able to learn those concepts. Okay, with that said, let's go ahead and build out our directory structure here using the mkdir or make directory command. Okay, there's multiple ways on how to do this. I'm just stating here the 2 ways on how to create it. Okay, the shorthand version is this format: mkdir -p. This tells the shell, this mkdir command, to preserve any parent directory or intermediate directory names that are already created in the OS. Okay, if it's not existent, the makedir command will create this, and then it will look at the list, okay, the elements or the names of the subfolders we want to create that's contained within this curly brackets, the set of curly brackets, basically making it a list. Okay, for from my experience, running this command in the Bourne shell on FreeBSD 13.1 does not behave properly. I had to switch to tcsh to run this command. Okay, so I just stick with the long format using a one-liner for loop. So as you can see here, the for loop is declared by using the for keyword followed by a placeholder variable. In this case, I'm gonna use I just because I'm lazy. If you are programming, you need to be descriptive in the variable name that you'll be using, like SpongeBob. Okay, and then right here followed by the in keyword, basically saying there is a list. Okay, and within that list there's different elements or items that our for loop will have to iterate through. Iterate means to go through one at a time. Okay, it's just a cycle. Okay, so after that, this is followed by our do clause, which tells the shell to run the command within the do clause. Okay, we have our command here, make the r-p, our parent directory name forward slash $i, basically calling this variable which we set earlier, and when we prepend it with $, the shell would know to return the actual value of this variable. In the first iteration, it would be subfolder 1. Once the for loop is done, it's gonna go through the list and pick the second element of subfolder underscore 2 as the value of $i, and so forth. Alright, with that, we have our actual examples here. Okay, and I will be using the for loop. For the sake of saving time, I'm just gonna copy and paste this, and I'm gonna go ahead and press enter. No errors there. That means command completed successfully. Okay, I also added here at the end a cd command to our parent project folder HOSTUTIL. If I run pwd, I should see those 4 subfolders in the list, and ls-l, and you can see here I have those 4 subdirectories created. Alright, moving on to the next step here. Step 2, if you are using Python version that's less than 3.x, you need to set the Python path environment variable value to the project directory name, or else you won't be able to import any of your Python modules into your main file. Okay, I am using Python 3.8, so I don't need to use this. If you are using a lower version of Python, 1.x or 2.x, you need to set this in your terminal session, or if you want to make this permanent, you can incorporate this line into your .bash rc file. Okay, Python 3.x does not need this because there were enhancements in Python that allows dynamic searching and recognition of Python modules by putting this file, which would be a blank file, on each folder that contains any Python files or Python module files. Alright, so let's do that. Let's create this blank dunder init dunder.py file on each of the folders that we just created. We could use touch, directory name followed by the file name, but again this is very tedious and we'll have to type, or we'll create this one and then copy this file to the other directories that we just created. Or we could also use a one-liner for loop that does everything for us. So let's be lazy and do the for loop. Copy and paste that here. No errors, that means everything's good. Let's verify that those files were created. I'm going to use 3. We could also use the ls command, -l for long format, capital R for recursive. Again, this lists our directories, and then here it lists our directory as well as the file names and the files that we just created. Alright, now that those are done, let's go ahead and build out our main application file. To do this, we could use the touch command followed by the file name. But again, I'm being lazy. I'm going to use echo followed by this string right here, which is basically the full path of our Python interpreter, and this hashtag pound sign in front tells the shell that this is an interpreter line within the script. Once the echo command completes, it's going to get redirected to the HOSTUTIL file that I will be using as my main file for this application. Alright, let's copy and paste that. Press enter. No errors. Let's see if that file was successfully created. HOSTUTIL. As we see here, it has read-write permissions for the owner. Okay, I'm going to change that permission and add the execute permission so that we can run this Python file. And we have successfully added that execute permission. Alright. We'll also verify that our echo command successfully inserted this line in our HOSTUTIL file, which it did. With the permission set and our Python interpreter set, if we run this application, it should give us a blank return. That means everything went well. Okay, if we run echo $0, okay, that gives us our shell. If you are in a Linux environment, okay, this should return a 0 for successful or 1 for a failure. Okay, I'm on a FreeBSD environment, so it's a bit different. Alright, with our host file created, let's go ahead and open the file using a text editor. I'm going to use Nano. You guys can use whatever you want, but I just prefer Nano for this tutorial. Okay, HOSTUTIL. We have our first line here. That -C flag gives us the line count. I'm on the second line. Also gives us the column number and the number of characters contained in this file. Alright, let's go over comments a little bit, because this is very important in code development, especially if you are collaborating with other developers, or if you're passing down, code from yourself to another person. It's just good to have comments within the application code to give other developers or programmers an idea of what the code is about. Okay, right here, this is called a multi-line comment, or in Python term, it's called a doc string or a document string. Okay, this basically allows the developer to add comments, descriptions, whatever information they want to put there, and it's just going to be in that blocked comment. Okay, right here, the second type of comment is called a block comment, which starts with a pound sign or a hashtag sign, and I like using this on the top of each of my functions or methods, just to kind of explain what the purpose of that function is. Speaking of functions, let's define one by writing or using the def keyword here, shortcut for define, followed by the function name that I want to use, in this case host underscore util. Best practices in Python, according to the pip documentation here, if you're going to use a multi-word name for a function or a method, you need to use or separate those words with an underscore and all small letters. Enter. Alright, Python is very strict with using spaces. It requires 4 spaces or a tab. Okay, for consistency, if you're gonna use spaces, stick with spaces. If you're gonna use tabs, stick with tabs. Don't intermix it. Why? If you copy and paste this code, if there's a mixture of tabs and spaces, it won't be beautiful. Okay, so I'm gonna stick with tabs just because we'll be building out this program and eventually it's gonna grow bigger, and instead of hitting the spacebar 4 times every time I indent, I will just press the tab key, which is only 1 stroke. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste this line, just calling the print function, and the print function calls or takes an argument, a string argument, and in this case the string is embedded inside a set of double quotes. In Python you could use double quotes or single quotes. There is no difference. I like using double quotes just because you may use an apostrophe within the string, and that allows you to do that. Okay, okay, example is this is Jonas's script. Okay, if you're using single quotes here and then you have this, Python will give you an error. Okay, so for my preference, I always use double quotes to enclose the string, and in that way I can use apostrophes within that string that I am specifying. Alright, I'm gonna delete that. And another comment here, this is called an inline comment, which basically defines or gives a description on what this print hello world is. Okay, in this case I just put example of inline comment. Okay, and then after that we're gonna specify our main if statement, dunder global variable name. Okay, this is a global variable. In Python, global variables right here in our definition, okay, are variables that are created outside of a function. Okay, so if you declare a variable outside of a function, that variable would be available to every part of your script. Okay, in this case we have our HOSTUTIL main file. So if I declare a global variable up here called my name equals Jonas, then we could call this variable my name inside the function, and we could also call this inside our main if statement. Okay, so if dunder name dunder equals, we're doing a comparison here, a string comparison to be exact. Okay, dunder main dunder, which is a value, okay, of the global variable name. Okay, in Python, once you specify a module, or if you are running the command within your main file, there will always be this global variable, and the value of that will be main. If you are importing other modules from other files, okay, and you're calling that here, the value of this global variable name will be the name of the module that you have imported. Okay, And for fun, I'm just gonna print dunder name here to show what that is. And then I'm gonna call our HOSTUTIL function that we specified up here. So basically it's saying, hey, if the value of name is main, go ahead and execute any of these commands. Okay, let's save that. Control O, enter, Control X to exit. Let's run the command, HOSTUTIL. If everything is good, we should get an output here that shows our hello world as well as the name of our global variable, or the value of our global variable. Right here, the value of name is main. So main equals main, okay, because the value of name is main. That means it's true. Because it's true and we don't get any errors, we run this. The interpreter runs these two lines. And there you go. Hello world. All right. So with that said, this concludes the this session. Okay, part 4, building out the project and the scope. On our next session, we will be starting to build out our application, and we'll be using classes. Okay, in newer Python versions 3.7 and above, they have incorporated data classes. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm gonna use the old method of defining classes and also defining methods within those classes. Okay, we're also gonna cover the difference between a function and a method, and also we're going to also define what a class is and what classes are used for. All right, to recap, okay, we have determined what the project is, the scope, and the design. We have learned Linux Unix commands to dynamically create files and folders. We've also learned how to set the Python interpreter line within our Python script and change the permissions or add the execute permissions to our main application file. We also learned what the if dunder name equals dunder main dunder clause within a Python application. And that's it, my friends. This is the end of this section of the tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up if you like it, and also hit the subscribe button to help me build my Python channel. And again, till next time, this is Jonas. Peace out.